Hi, so I'm going to be presenting on digital information provision and farmer behavior. My name is Raissa Fabregas, and this is joint work with Michael Kramer, Matt Lowe's, Robert Ahn, and Julia Singh. So let me start just by motivating very quickly why I think this is an interesting area to look at. And something that we've seen in the last 20 years is just a massive increase in the number of people in developing countries who have access to a mobile phone. And so this is a total game changer in the ability of different types of organizations to reach people at scale and at a very low cost with informational interventions, with not just to try to affect their behavior. And so we do see that in a number of different areas, from health and education to financial behaviors and civic engagement, many organizations are trying to use these tools. The area that we're interested in is agricultural extension. So basically providing farmers with information about agriculture. And this is an area with a lot of potential because many farmers in developing countries never have access to any type of information, in part because it's actually quite expensive to get in-person services. So someone coming and visiting your farm and providing you with information. And so there have been a number of impact evaluations of digital extension programs. And so far, the literature has been characterized as mixed, with evidence of some positive effects. Some programs have found null effects. And so from the point of view of a policymaker, this is a little bit problematic, right? Because it's a little bit unclear whether one really needs to design programs in a very specific way for them to work, or whether what we're observing is just due to sampling variation. Or it's possible that some studies are just insufficiently powered to detect small effects. So what we're going to be doing in this project is asking a very simple question, which is whether text message-based agricultural extension can really affect farmer behavior. And so what we're going to do to answer this question is be involved in 6 experiments of these text-based extension programs implemented with smallholder farmers in Kenya and Rwanda. All the programs provided information about one particular input called agricultural lime, which is used to reduce soil acidity, and which our partner organizations were encouraging farmers to try. And then 4 programs were also providing information on the use of chemical fertilizers. And so we're going to analyze sort of like each experiment individually, but we're also going to combine all the results using a meta-analysis, and that's also going to increase our statistical power. So what are the contributions of this project? So we do have these 6 experiments. They were implemented by 3 different partners. So we work with the government of Kenya, we work with PAD and IPA, who are these NGOs and a research NGO. And we work with a social enterprise called One Acre Fund. And so each one of these organizations is going to have, very similar objectives. So they want farmers to try out these inputs. They have similar tools, so these text messages, but they have different constraints and ideas on how to design sort of the messages, so the content. They reach to different types of farmer populations, and they were also implemented in different agricultural seasons. So that's going to allow us to learn something about the extent of impact heterogeneity in these programs. Also, we have the fortune that we could work with very large sample sizes. So in total, across all 6 programs, we reach about 150,000 farmers. So this is going to be very important for us because 2 programs can still be cost effective even with modest impacts, right? So we really want to be powered to detect those small effects. We can measure behavior change through real input purchases. So some programs, we also collect survey data but for all the programs, we do have sort of like these real input behavior change. And apart from these main effects, we can test for a range of different complementary questions, right? So whether the effects persist, whether there's message fatigue, how much do these messages crowd out sort of like input purchases or purchases for other inputs? Is there a lot of heterogeneity? you know, how do you frame these messages? Does that matter? Does repetition matter? So I'm not gonna have time to go through each one of these results, but all of that can be found on the paper. So very quickly on sort of like the main results. So this is a forest plot. So you can see sort of like the different coefficients for each one of the different 6 experiments in this chart. And then sort of that diamond at the bottom, that's sort of the result from a random effects meta-analysis. So we're gonna be running for each experiment intent to treat logistic regressions. So the results are actually shown in terms of odds ratios. Just as a reminder, odds ratios greater than 1 signify that the event is more likely to occur, right? So what we're seeing here is that there is a positive and significant effect on the probability that farmers follow their recommendation. And we also reject the null effect, we also fail to reject the null effect of a homogeneous effects across these programs. Just as a comparison with a linear probability model, this is about a 2 percentage point increase in the probability of following the recommendations. Similarly, we find positive and significant effects for following the fertilizer recommendations. The magnitude is pretty similar. And again, we fail to reject the null of homogeneous effects across these programs. So just to summarize very quickly, apart from sort of like these main effects that I showed, other things that we find is that there's no evidence of input crowd-out. We do also see that there's some persistence of the effect over the next season, and no evidence that farmers are fatigued if you send sort of like multiple messages over various seasons. We don't find evidence of heterogeneity across a number of different observable characteristics. We also experimented with, framing of the messages that did not have differential impacts. Something that did have an additional impact was repeating the messages, and having a person on the phone explaining the messages also, we do not detect an additional impact from that. Finally, something that we do sort of like find is that the effects from using administrative data are significantly different and smaller than those from using survey data. So something to keep an eye out for people collecting this type of information. So while the effects are modest, so the effect sizes are not that large, our back of envelope calculation suggests this benefit cost ratio about 10 to 1. So these programs can still be quite cost effective. And the fact that we have these large sample sizes do allow us to detect these small effects. Thank you very much.